Hi everyone! If your pool looks clean until the evening light hits the water, and suddenly you see bugs, pollen, petals, and random floaters everywhere, this is the kind of product that starts to make a lot of sense. Today I'm reviewing the AIPER Surfer S2 Pool Surface Skimmer, and I'm going to talk about what it's actually like to live with it in the pool day after day. For me, the biggest reason this product caught my attention was surface debris. Leaves are annoying, but the tiny stuff is worse. I'm talking about gnats, little insects, pollen, dust, flower petals, and those small bits that seem to float forever before finally sinking to the bottom. My pool can look fine from a distance, but once the sun hits the surface, or especially during an evening swim, all that little debris becomes impossible to ignore. That's where the Surfer S2 really changes the routine. Instead of waiting for debris to sink, it patrols the surface and catches it while it's still floating. That alone makes the pool feel cleaner, because the water looks clear from the top down. It also means there is less for the floor cleaner or filtration system to deal with later. Visually, it's easy to understand what this thing does. It quietly cruises around the pool like a small floating robot, pulling surface debris into its front opening and trapping it in the basket. It doesn't move like it's in a perfect mapped pattern, and at first it can look a little slow or random. But the important thing is that it keeps going. That relentless movement is what makes it effective. Bugs, pollen, petals, and leaves may not get picked up instantly, but if it stays out there long enough, it eventually finds them. One of my favorite parts is that it can run on solar power. I charged it with the included plug-in charger when I first got it, but after that, the solar panel kept it going extremely well in normal sunny conditions. On sunny days, it keeps charging while it's out in the pool, and it can stay working for hours and hours. I like that I'm not constantly taking it out, plugging it in, and planning around battery life. The charging cable is still a nice backup though. If the weather is rainy, cloudy, or if the pool only gets partial sun, it's good to have the option to plug it in for a few hours instead of waiting on the sun. That makes it feel more dependable, especially if you want it ready before people come over. The app is another feature I ended up appreciating more than I expected. It lets me check the battery, use remote control, and create schedules. The scheduling is useful if you want it to run at certain times during the day, and the remote control is surprisingly handy when you see a few leaves floating in one area and want to steer the skimmer toward them. That remote control can make a big difference, because the robot's normal movement is more patient and targeted. The app also makes cleaning easier, because you can guide the unit toward the edge before pulling it out. Once it's there, turning it off, sliding out the basket, opening it, and rinsing it with a hose is simple. The basket does a good job holding on to what it collects, and the fine mesh is especially useful for tiny bugs and pollen. I found that when debris is light, the basket can go quite a while before needing to be emptied. But if your pool is under trees or going through a heavy leaf season, you'll definitely want to empty it more often. Another nice detail is that the debris stays in the basket when you lift the skimmer out. That sounds small, but anyone who has cleaned pool equipment knows how annoying it is when all the gross stuff falls right back into the water. With this, cleaning is quick and not nearly as messy. In terms of performance, this is where the Surfer S2 really earns its place. It picks up the daily surface junk that used to make me reach for a net. Tiny gnats, flying ants, pollen, leaves, flower petals, and other floating debris all end up in the basket. The pool surface looks calmer and cleaner, and there's less of that unpleasant feeling of jumping in and realizing you're swimming with bugs and floaters. It's also quiet. It doesn't draw attention to itself in an annoying way. Most of the time it just moves around in the background while the pool slowly starts looking better. I can easily see why people end up giving it a nickname, because after a while, it feels like a little pool helper that's always on duty. Obstacle handling has been good overall. It can navigate around steps, ladders, skimmer openings, and other pool features depending on the pool layout. There are anti-stranding legs, and there's also a floating noodle accessory if needed for certain skimmer openings. In my experience, once it's set up correctly for the pool, it doesn't need much attention. One thing I really wanted to mention is using it with a pressure-side hose cleaner, like a Polaris-style hose cleaner. A lot of people worry that a floating solar skimmer and a hose cleaner can't share the same pool, because the hose can trap the skimmer. That can happen if the hose floats are set up in the usual way. But there's a workaround, removing most of the hose floats and leaving only a few positioned so the hose sections drape down into the water instead of floating across the whole surface. With fewer floats at the surface, the skimmer can glide over the hose or gently push over the float instead of getting stuck. It may take some adjusting in the water, but it can work. Now, there are a few downsides. First, this is not a floor or wall cleaner. It is a surface skimmer. You still need a floor cleaner, vacuum, or another system for that job. The best use for this is preventing debris from sinking in the first place. Second, its movement can look random. If you only have a few leaves in the pool, it may take a while before it happens to collect all of them, unless you use the remote control. For large amounts of pollen, bugs, petals, or scattered debris, that constant roaming works very well. But if you expect it to immediately lock onto 3 leaves and chase them down, that's not really how it behaves. The basket size is good for regular debris, but during heavy leaf fall, I would like it to be a little bigger. Also, the chlorine tablet holder built into the basket may not fit every chlorine puck comfortably, so that part could be improved. I've also heard of a clicking or squeaking noise happening if the basket doesn't seat properly, or if something is slightly off with the basket gear or propeller area. In that situation, checking the basket fit is worth doing first, because the issue may not be the whole robot. When everything is seated correctly, the unit should be quiet. Overall, I think the AIPER Surfer S2 is one of those pool products that makes the biggest difference in daily convenience. It doesn't magically replace every part of pool maintenance, but it takes over the most annoying surface skimming chore and does it quietly, consistently, and mostly on its own. If your pool gets bugs, pollen, petals, leaves, or dust on the surface, this can make the water look noticeably cleaner and make swimming feel much more inviting. It is a bit pricey, and it isn't perfect. But for the amount of time it saves and how clean it keeps the surface, I think it's a very worthwhile pool upgrade. If you have any questions about this product, feel free to leave them in the comments below.